But yeah, anyway, this game is probably gonna stop tomorrow, I would guess, because just because of the lore Stenjir and the face progress that I have right now, I think the next chapter or the chapter after that is maybe the last one, so yeah, let's finish the game tomorrow, I suppose, and then I'm gonna give more of my thoughts. But as of my thoughts right now about the game, that combat is I almost don't wanna be rude, but like that combat almost feels like it shouldn't be there. Like the combat in this game is so like it's so mechanically and interactively like bare bones compared to like, you know, what combat should be like. Like, let alone comparing like the combat what it was in the previous game in Senua's Sacrifice. Even if we don't compare it to that, or especially if we compare it to that, then, you know, it's so bare bones, you know? Like, it feels like it's so, like, out of your control. Like, the only things that I really feel in this game's combat is, like, you know, you try to hit one parry on the enemy, like, one time, one perfect parry, and then you just punish them with the, you know, couple light attacks into a heavy or something. And that's, like, the entire combat from start to finish. There's no more dynamics rather than just that, pretty much. And then occasionally, like, you know, when your focus bar comes up, you can use the focus to, like, force kill, like, one enemy for free. Because, you know, time is slowed down for a moment. But, like, in Senua's Sacrifice, the reason as to why I, you know, liked that game in the first place was because the combat in the game was actually, like, very satisfying. And it was also surprisingly, like, interactive is not the right word. The player urgency in the combat in that game is nicer. Yeah, that's what I meant. Or that's what I mean. Like, when you have more enemies on your screen at times, and when the parry animation is very fast in the combat, and when several enemies attack you at the same time, the combat has to have a bit less weight on it, and it has to flow from attacks to new attacks and rolls faster because of the amount of enemies that can attack you at once. So, in this game, when you have the dynamic of only one enemy at a time, the developers do not have to concern themselves so much with how weighty or how realistic they want the combat to be, because you're only fighting one enemy at a time in this game, compared to Senua's Sacrifice, so they can just have the combat be like the, you know, most realistic feeling or looking thing that you can possibly have, but it makes for horrible gameplay. Because, like, you take all of the, like, the panic, the dread, and the player urgency, and the fast interactiveness, and the, you know, on-the-spot, like, spontaneous mechanics of the player in the moments of combat, and that makes the combat feel so... It makes the combat feel so, like, monotone when you see it once. It's like every single one of these feels the same, but there's just some different, like, visual flavors on it. While in, you know, Hellblade Senua's Sacrifice, it actually felt like how you played the combat, you had more expression. I mean, you obviously had, like, decent expression in the combat, and then it also felt like, you know, the fate of the moments in combat, or just, you know, your life on Senua, was actually, like, in the player's hands a lot more, rather than something that just kind of almost autoplayed itself within a couple, you know, button inputs. So the combat in this game is it's a massive downgrade from the first game, which was one of the, like, most important things from Senua's Sacrifice that actually made me like the game. Like, all of the other stuff is very good to have in the game, but if the combat does not feel nice in the game, or the main parts of the gameplay that the game has, then you don't have a game. So, like, the puzzle elements in this game feel very much fine when you compare those to Senua's Sacrifice. I have no complaints about those, honestly. They are just fine, but they were never, ever, ever the thing that made me interested in playing, you know, Senua's Sacrifice. It was when I first felt and saw the combat on top of the atmosphere, the music, the sound effects, the very unusual storytelling, the psychosis on the character, which is a very unique premise to have. All of that was like, you know, made it like even more interesting. But if the combat was not the way it was, then it would not have just, you know, clicked for me like that, you know? So like, you know, what I'm saying here is I enjoyed this game less than the first game. However, there's also maybe the novelty factor, you know? Because, you know, I already knew what I was expecting here. Maybe I value Senua's Sacrifice more because it was my first experience with this kind of premise. So I can't really like, you know, I can't take my like prejudice off from this because of that. Because I already experienced like the same kind of like premise and the same like dynamic with the voices and the storytelling already in the first game. So hearing it in this game, it doesn't have as much weight anymore because I already heard it in the first game. So it's like, it makes it harder for me to judge fairly also because of that. The novelty has like worn itself off, I think. Or it has worn itself off more, maybe, I should say. But, as I said, the combat was a massive downgrade and I do not like it. So, if we go by just the style, just the atmosphere, and just the, you know, sound effects, the voice lines, and just anything else that has to do with the player urgency, and the actual, like, mechanical part of the combat itself, it's only an upgrade pretty much from the previous game. But the most fun part of it, which is the, you know, what a game is supposed to be, is you control the fate of the, you know, character. You insert yourself in the shoes of the character and actually your movement matters. You know, the player urgency part of it. That part, if it sucks, then it might as well just be an autoplay video or a movie at that point. Like, there might as well not be gameplay on those moments, you know? So that's how I feel about this game so far. Everything else, really immaculate, like in the first game. And better than in the first game, actually. But the combat, not so much.